In times of war, death is familiar. Even with victory comes cost. To return home seems as if it would be a blessing. In actuality, soldiers are cursed with survivor's guilt. Surviving tragedy, unbearable conditions, and watching your buddies die can tear one apart. To find out how bad the Vietnam War was and why people were so against it, I was able to meet with some Vietnam veterans who shared with me their stories.
What made you want to serve?
The government said I was supposed to. I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
You were drafted?
Yep. I went right into the Army.
When I got out of high school, college wasn't an option for me, so I joined before I got drafted.
I was drafted 1969, July.
My father was in World War II in Korea. My brother was in Vietnam in '65, and it's kind of like a family tradition to go. I was going to get drafted, and I wanted to go into Pacific duty. I didn't want to be drafted and go into infantry, so I joined.
Full time was from 1972 to 1982, and then I got out of the service and went from 82 until 93 up at the International Guard up in Niagara Falls with a 107 tactical wing.
Well, I don't know if I really wanted to serve. I didn't have a choice. I was drafted. Not that I didn't want to go, but I never really thought about going in, although my father was in World War II in the Army. So, I mean, I guess they had a little bit to do with it. But I took the calling.
From the men that I had interviewed, the majority were drafted or had enlisted in fear of being drafted and placed into the infantry. The infantry was mentally one of the toughest jobs in the Vietnam War. This is because this was the job that surrounded most deaths. In the war, the infantrymen saw an average of 240 days of combat in 1 year. It was a job responsible for many enemy deaths. Each day had taken a toll on the soldiers. Each death represents more than an instant. It represents a soldier who had shot the gun to kill the man. It represents a bystander seeing a man breathing turn cold. It represents two families, one American and one Vietnamese, mourning their loved ones. All of these combined lead to PTSD, an anxiety disorder that is a part of soldiers' daily lives. PTSD makes each victim feel completely alone, and for most infantry survivors, this is true.
I kind of wrote myself off. You live day to day. It's funny, when you talk about friends that you've lost, especially in combat, you don't talk about the date. You would always say the day so-and-so died. That's kind of how you kept track of time.
What was your role in combat?
Shot people. I was an infantryman. I was a rifleman in a machine gun squad.
War changes you. First of all, it makes you grow up and realize that you can be dead at any time. It also made me look at the fact that there are people out there that are bad and will kill you. I mean, with no questions asked.
How did you stay hopeful and positive?
And I texted him to show you.
I told him to call the court and tell him we don't.
Sometimes it was,
I don't have anything for him.
you didn't. You just lived day to day. You went through. Half my time I spent out in the field.
But he's gonna have to talk to Judge Klein.
Going up and down hills.
He's sitting here.
I went into Cambodia.
I will talk to Dennis when he comes back in the town. Your hope is that you get through it. And you stay motivated. In the Army, you stay motivated no matter what. They motivate you. And the motivation that I had was to get through it and get back home alive.
Good for you.
To these veterans, death seemed to be a part of life, part of war. However, that did not mean they weren't scared. Vietnam was a brutal war. It was full of randomness and tragedy. In the Vietnam War, 58,220 American soldiers had died. However, after the war, the survivors had to live with that number floating across their minds and how they were lucky enough to survive. Facing battle, facing bullets, and facing death preoccupied their thoughts. As in most wars, some had never really returned, meaning they were so fazed by what had happened during their service that they had left a part of themselves in the service and came home a changed person. In Vietnam, the war tactic called guerrilla warfare was practiced. This form of fighting was a series of unorganized attacks that had fueled resources of depression and senses of prosecution in these soldiers that would haunt their lives forever. Survivor's guilt took over the lives of those who had remained. Something so simple had caused so much pain.
You know, it's like the first day I was there, they put us in a foxhole, and the base was taking orders, and all I could picture was this mortar coming down in my foxhole.
Yeah. Did you send letters, or did you hear from your family?
Yeah, I used to write all the time. A lot of letters from my family and my girlfriend. So.
I wrote every couple of weeks to my parents, and then my girlfriend at the time, I used to write to her, but then I got a small tape recorder. We used to send tapes back and forth. Pretty high tech for way back then. I actually wound up marrying her. We've been married for 52 years.
Oh, that's so sweet. What's her name?
Her name?
Yeah.
Sandra. Andy.
Staying in touch with family provided hope for the soldiers. It was a source from the outside world, a part of home. These letters represented what the soldiers had stood for. It was a distraction from the darkness that surrounded them. No matter what the depth of the letter was, anything would have been substantial enough to take a soldier from Vietnam back home mentally. Some of the veterans told me that Latter Day was a day they looked forward to greatly. However, some didn't pay any attention to it. They were focused on their job. The veterans that I met with told me that they would write whenever they were allowed to. Unfortunately, writing time was limited, and the soldiers could only fit in a little about what had become their life at the time. Soldiers mainly wrote to their family members and girlfriends, stressing that they were okay and that they would be okay. However, their okay meant that they were still alive and nothing more. The mental effects of the war had not yet set in and would haunt them after their term. Over 800,000 Vietnam veterans suffered from problems related to post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. This condition is characterized as intrusive, repetitive thoughts of memories related to war trauma, avoidance and denial of these memories and the emotions they trigger, and systems of increased arousal such as irritability, hypervigilance, and angry outbursts. The soldiers shielded their loved ones from the true terrors that they faced daily.
Do you remember your last day of service?
Oh yeah. My last day of service, I was at Fort Dix, and the night before I went out and got blasted, and it took a while for me to get out of the Army. That was
It was March 7th, 1972. I came out of Fort Sill, Oklahoma, because I had gone there to be discharged, and flew home. Toward the end of your deal, they always had these, they had actually a picture for your last 100 days there, and you just kind of scratched off the day, and they had like 100 days, and they just scratched off 90 to 100, and that's what called me the short timer. And it was usually a picture of a woman, a silhouette of a woman like you've seen on these chrome things on lights or on mud flaps or anything on cars or trucks. Sometimes you see them.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it was, and it was just a silhouette. We every day you kept scratching one day up till you got short, and you're out of here.
Stepped outside of your body, your mind, and just did your job and waited for the day you got out. It's the only way you could keep your sanity.
Actually, the daughter was feeling good.
My wife, now, I met her at 15. I was 15 and she was 13. So we had been together since then. We met in 1963. And she kept my sanity. I like to say, if it wasn't for her, I'd be dead or in jail. And we've been married for 46 years now. So
Discharged from Fort Lewis, Washington. Landed early in the morning, and by 6 o'clock that night I was a free man. That was my last day in the service.
Do you have any favorite memories from the service?
Oh, I have a lot of them. I got to see a lot of things, being that I flew. So, a lot of interesting days, a lot of very hectic days. But it was interesting. But I can tell you one story. It's not really bad, but okay. And I don't know if you know what an LZ is. It's called a landing zone out in the middle of nowhere, where there'd be soldiers. But anyway, you'd have to bring them in supplies. So we were flying in to bring them supplies, and we flew over an outhouse, and we blew the outhouse down the side of a hill. And inside the outhouse was an officer. And he got out and was waving his arms at us, you know. And well, I waved back, but not in a very nice way. Anyways, that night when we got back to our main place, they were waiting for us and got reprimanded for doing that. But I wasn't flying the helicopter, I was just enjoying myself. But yeah, that was a little bit of a funny thing that happened.
When you came home, did you feel welcomed?
No. We went to Seattle, Washington, and at the Seattle airport had some problems with protesters. And then on a flight from Chicago to Buffalo, had some problems.
Well, the Navy was taking care of all my paperwork and all the stuff that they do to discharge you. And it was nice because I was E5. I got to stay with the older guys, you know, nice 2-bedroom room or 2-bed room. And when you went out, because it was a service town, more or less, in other words, there was a lot of people that were. It was a service, you know, and they were pretty decent. But you get back to Buffalo, and here I am coming off the airplane. We just get off the airplane. We're in the airport, and I get all those
5 years to be a pilot.
people yelling at me, calling me a killer, you know, stuff like that. No, it's for the first couple of years, and since then I've gotten involved with several of these things, and it's wonderful because we've all had the same experiences, and we're alive, and we're fighting. We're fighting all the things that we've got.
When I first got back, I kind of bunkered myself in as well. I wasn't ready to, once I started associating with some of my old friends and I felt the animosity, I kind of stayed at my parents' house for a while. And stayed in my room, actually slept on the floor because I was used to bed. My mother came in one day and stumbled over me, not realizing where I was.
Vietnam protesters showed no mercy to newly discharged soldiers. Even though the soldiers were only taking orders, in the eyes of the protesters it was still a mistake. The protesters did not recognize the amount of stress the soldiers had faced in Vietnam and that they were drafted. They only saw killers or sadists who were war-hungry. A soldier was treated as a war criminal, trapped inside their own country, hated by people who they had fought for. It took a little bit of time before the Vietnam veterans were completely proud of their service.
Proud of your service?
Oh, yes, I am. Yes, very proud.
Service?
Oh, absolutely. You could tell them by the way I was talking, didn't you? Yeah. Yes, I most certainly am. It could be better.
Okay.
It's you take what you get, and you thank God that you're alive. You know,
gave us guns to play with.
it's
There is something I don't feel we lost the war. I feel the older politicians put us in a position to leave when we could have gone on and won the war. But yes, I'm very proud. I'm in a bit, in a dark mood. And you sit down with these guys, and by the time you're here 15 minutes, somebody will say something, and kind of pick on each other, and
Yeah, it keeps you on an even keel, keeps you from sinking too far. You get a chance to talk to other guys.
Decided to join up here and help out, which I do. I go out with another person. We do Agent Orange. Like we have one coming up May 7th at Premier Liquor, where we go and we get people donate money to our chapter for the upkeep and buying food that we have next door, and get the information out to other Vietnam veterans that are affected by Agent Orange, which there's a lot of people out there that, they're afraid, but they shouldn't be. They should go to the VA, because I just talked to one woman yesterday. She had lost her husband 18 years ago, and she never got any claim.
Veterans of the Vietnam War are affected by Agent Orange. Not only were civilians of Vietnam affected, but also soldiers. Former soldiers should not be facing their troubles alone. They should not be afraid to go to the VA. The VA has changed, and people are willing and wanting to give help. The world is safer now than it was for the Vietnam veterans.